What if the only child of a nation's president was suffering on the streets, hungry, homeless, and unloved, simply because she didn't know who she truly was? This is Bisola's heartbreaking story. Abandoned, adopted, and later thrown out, she crossed paths with her real mother, the First Lady, without either of them knowing the truth. How did it all happen? And will she ever discover her true identity? Sit back, relax. Let's find out in this amazing story. And if you are joining us for the first time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Zen interesting stories like this. Let's dive in. Who stole the meat in this pot? Mummy Aduni's voice thundered through the house like a war drum. Plates clattered. The twins, barely 5 years old, scampered to a corner startled. Bisola stood frozen beside the sink, her small fingers still wet from washing the plates she hadn't even eaten from. I said, who stole this meat? Mummy Aduni roared again, lifting the lid of the steaming pot. Only 2 pieces of meat remained. I didn't touch anything, Bisola said quietly, barely above a whisper. You're lying, you ungrateful witch, the woman spat. Her hand flew before Bisola could blink. A hot slap landed on the girl's cheek, sharp and humiliating. Tears welled in Bisola's eyes, but she didn't cry out. She had learned that crying made things worse. After everything we've done for you, picking you from the gutter like a duyai, raising you like our own, this is how you repay us? Bisola wanted to scream, you didn't pick me out of love. You picked me because you wanted to look good at church. But she said nothing. Her stomach growled in protest. She hadn't tasted meat in weeks. Her adoptive father, Baba Aduni, walked in, drawn by the noise. He adjusted his wrapper and looked straight at Bisola. She must go, he said flatly. We warned her. She's now a thief on top of being a burden. I didn't steal. Bisola tried again, but Mummy Aduni grabbed her by the arm and dragged her to the living room. You think this is your real home? That we owe you anything? Let me remind you, we adopted you out of pity when you were just 2 years old. And now God has blessed us with our own children. You're no longer needed here. But I'm sorry, please don't throw me out, Bisola pleaded, trembling. Too late. Baba Aduni opened the front door. Carry your things. In fact, you have nothing. Just leave. The twins watched with wide, confused eyes as Bisola was pushed out the door. No shoes, no bag, just the thin gown she had worn since morning. The door slammed behind her. Lock clicked, and just like that, she was homeless. She stood there, stunned, barefoot on the rough gravel, trying to understand what had just happened. Her chest heaved with silent sobs. Her legs trembled. She had nowhere to go. Neighbors peeked through their curtains but said nothing. Nobody wanted to meddle in family matters. She walked aimlessly into the night, her stomach empty, her heart shattered. She wandered for hours, dodging okadas and sleeping dogs, until she found herself at a market square. She curled up behind a stack of crates, shivering as the night breeze wrapped around her like a punishment. Her cheeks still stung from the slap. Her eyes burned with exhaustion. She stared into the darkness and whispered, what did I do wrong? No answer, just the distant rumble of a generator. For the first time in her life, Bisola felt like she truly didn't belong anywhere. Not even the streets welcomed her. She had no parents, no home, no bed. She didn't even know her real name. Bisola was the name the orphanage gave her. Was that even hers? Why was I born if nobody wanted me? She cried softly into her knees, trying not to attract attention. At dawn, a woman sweeping the market chased her away with a broom. Oloshi, dirty girl, go back to your parents. I don't have any, Bisola whispered, dragging her tired legs down the road. She approached a food stall and begged, please, I'm hungry. The woman hissed and turned her back. God forbid I feed a street thief. Bisola collapsed beside a wooden kiosk, too weak to keep walking. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her head throbbed. Her stomach felt like a hole. When the kiosk owner arrived, he kicked her leg. Go, before police will come and say I'm hiding a criminal. She stumbled away again. By evening, Bisola sat under a broken shed near a mechanic's shop, curled up like a wounded animal. A boy her age handed her half a bottle of water and a torn piece of bread. She took it like it was gold. "Where's your family?" he asked. She didn't answer. He stared at her for a moment. "Street life is hard. Don't die, okay?" Bisola nodded, but deep down she was already giving up. Her eyes stung as she looked up at the night sky. "Dear God, do I even matter?" No voice answered. But somewhere, miles away, a woman who once held her in her arms was waking up from a nightmare she couldn't understand. The second night on the street was worse than the first. A storm was coming. The skies over Lagos grumbled low and mean as Bisola crouched beneath a broken umbrella stand near Oshodi Bridge. The wind slapped her thin dress against her bones. Thunder rumbled again. She tightened her arms around herself, but her body had already gone numb from hunger and cold. Nearby, some area boys laughed around a fire made from old tires. Their eyes gleamed in the dark like cats. One of them whistled toward Bisola. "Hey, Smalley, come sit here with us now," one of them called, patting his lap. Bisola didn't move. Another boy stood up and began walking toward her. Her instincts screamed. She grabbed her slippers and ran, barefoot, heart pounding. She didn't stop until she reached a gutter behind a locked shop. She climbed in and curled up between two plastic containers that smelled of soap and rot. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. She was 13, alone, terrified, and invisible. By morning, her lips were dry and cracked. Her throat burned. Her stomach was hollow. She wandered into a busy street near a food canteen and watched people eat steaming plates of rice and stew. Her nose twitched. Her legs shook. She waited until one woman stood up to answer a phone call, then crept toward the plate and quickly grabbed a spoonful of rice. "Thief!" someone shouted. She froze. The woman returned and slapped her across the face before she could explain. A crowd gathered instantly. "Na small pikin, leave her," one man said. "She go grow turn armed robber," the woman snapped. "This is how they start." A bystander offered her a sachet of water. She took it and ran, tears blinding her eyes. She collapsed beneath a mango tree near the main road, breathing heavily. A small boy beside her pointed. "Auntie, your leg is bleeding." She looked down and saw a deep scratch on her ankle. She didn't even feel it. The pain was too far behind the pain in her heart. That evening, she found a small park bench at Alacuco Junction. She sat beside an old beggar woman with gray hair and watery eyes. "You're too young for this life," the woman said, not unkindly. "I was kicked out," Bisola whispered. "You have parents?" Bisola hesitated. "I don't know who they are. The people who adopted me threw me out last week." The old woman nodded slowly. "There's something dangerous about being forgotten. You start to feel like maybe God forgot you too." Bisola lowered her head. The woman gave her a piece of boiled corn. "Eat. You'll need your strength." She chewed slowly, tears streaming down her face with each bite. The next day, Bisola tried to beg at a car park. She stretched out her hand toward a woman in an SUV. The driver rolled up the tinted glass. "You again?" a kiosk owner shouted. "I warned you not to beg here." "I'm just hungry," Bisola pleaded. The man picked up a stick and charged toward her. She ran again. Her legs ached, her back throbbed, but she ran until her lungs burned. She found herself at a street market and collapsed beside a bucket of oranges. The seller hissed and moved her goods away. Bisola curled up beside a cement block and tried to sleep. That night she had a dream. A woman in a blue wrapper stood beside a river, crying. "Where is my daughter?" the woman kept repeating. Bisola tried to speak to her, but her voice wouldn't come out. She just kept reaching. Suddenly the woman turned, and for a split second, her face looked just like Bisola's. Bisola woke up gasping. She sat up, heart racing. Who was that woman? Was it her mother? She'd never seen her face, never even dared to imagine what she might look like. But something in her chest told her that dream meant something. The next morning, she decided to try something different. "I'll go back to where it all began," she whispered. The name came to her like a whisper in her head. All Love Orphanage. That's what Mommy Adunni always told people when bragging about her charity. "We adopted her from All Love Orphanage. Oh, we are not like others." Maybe, just maybe, they would let her stay. Even if it was just for one night. With the last bit of strength she had, she began walking toward Agage. She didn't know the way exactly, but she asked for directions at bus stops. A conductor offered her a ride but dropped her halfway after passengers complained of the smelly girl. Bisola didn't argue. She kept walking. The presidential suite was quiet, too quiet. Doris Okoro, Nigeria's first lady, sat at the edge of her luxury chaise lounge, staring into nothingness. Her silk robe clung to her thin frame. Her once glowing skin was pale now, tired from months of private sorrow. The television in her room played softly in the background, some news about a new government project, but she wasn't listening. Her hand clutched a medical report. Another failure. Another test that said, everything appears normal, no medical reason for infertility. Normal. Everything was normal, except her womb was still empty after 10 years of marriage. She tossed the paper aside and buried her face in her hands. Just then a knock. "Come in," she muttered. Her personal aide, Angela, stepped in, concern written across her face. "Ma, you've not eaten since morning." "I'm fine. You said that yesterday and the day before. Ma, this isn't you." Doris looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "Do you know what it means to walk through hospitals across 3 continents and hear the same thing? That nothing is wrong with me? Then what's the explanation?" Angela knelt beside her. "Sir has been asking after you. He's worried." Doris gave a bitter smile. "The president has a nation to run. He doesn't need a broken wife adding to his burden." "That's not true," Angela whispered. "You are his heart." Later that night, alone in the bathroom, Doris stood in front of the mirror and lifted her blouse. She placed a hand over her belly. "Why won't you carry life?" she whispered to herself. She remembered the times she had decorated nurseries that were never used, the baby clothes she bought and gave away each year, the nights she laid beside her husband and pretended to be strong when all she wanted was to scream. She had done IVF, prayed at vigils, fasted, visited Europe's best gynecologists. Nothing. Nothing. Tears rolled down her cheeks. 2 weeks later, she sat quietly at the office of Prophet Isaiah, a man she had met at a presidential breakfast years ago. She had resisted visiting prophets for years, but this one, they said, sees beyond eyes. He poured oil into a small bowl and looked into it as if it held a universe. "You have carried guilt for over 2 decades, he said, his voice calm. Doris stiffened. "Guilt? For what?" "You had a child, many years ago," he said, not looking at her. "You were young, just 17. The room began to spin. I was dating Emeka before he became anything. I told him I was pregnant. He panicked and ran to Lagos to hustle. I was alone, scared, poor. You gave birth," the prophet continued gently, "and left that baby by the roadside, near a certain place." Doris's hands trembled violently. "All Love Orphanage," the prophet said, eyes still fixed on the bowl. A sound escaped Doris's throat, part sea, part confession. "I didn't want to kill the child. I just wanted her to be found, to have a better life than I could give." The prophet looked up at her. "The tears of that abandoned girl still cry out. Her pain is the chain wrapped around your womb." Doris was speechless. He continued, "You must find her. Wherever she is, find her. She is alive and suffering. Her tears are your burden." "But I don't know how," Doris whispered, broken. "I don't even know what she looks like now." "Start with repentance, then search. Search like your life depends on it." That evening, Doris sat opposite President Emeka Okorowo in their private lounge. She hadn't spoken a word since returning from the prophet's place. "What is it?" he finally asked. She looked at him and spoke the words she had never told another soul. "I had a child when I was 17. Your child." Silence. Emeka leaned back slowly, stunned. "You told me you had an abortion back then," he said softly. "I lied. I gave birth and left her near All Love Orphanage. I didn't know what else to do." He ran a hand down his face, heart racing. "And she's alive?" "The prophet said she is. And all this while," he shook his head, "we've been searching for an answer, and it's our daughter." Doris broke down. "I've lived every day wondering if she survived, if she's in school, if she's happy, and now she's out there, alone. President Okoro stood, fists clenched. Then we find her. We will use every resource we have. We will comb this nation. Doris wiped her tears. But what if she hates me? Then we will earn her forgiveness. The next morning, Doris released a public statement. A bounty, $1 million for anyone who could help locate her missing daughter. She didn't give details. No names, no photos, just this. 22 years ago, I left a baby girl near All Love Orphanage in Lagos. If you know anyone who matches this story, please reach out. You will be rewarded. The news exploded nationwide. Journalists ran with headlines. People on social media speculated. And somewhere across the city, Bisola sat under a broken kiosk, holding a torn bread crust, shivering under the early evening rain, completely unaware that the most powerful woman in the country was looking for her. And not just as a savior, but as her mother. The morning after the First Lady's announcement, Nigeria woke up to chaos. $1 million, that was all it took. TV screens, radio jingles, Twitter feeds, newspapers. Every outlet buzzed with the same breaking story. First Lady offers $1 million to find long-lost daughter. Some mocked her, some wept for her, but most saw an opportunity. From Lagos to Kano, stories poured in. I used to work at All Love Orphanage, one woman claimed on AIT News. There was a girl with a birthmark on her arm. I'm sure she's the one. An old man in Onitsha stood outside his compound holding a framed photo of his late granddaughter. She was adopted. Maybe she's the one. Inside the presidential villa, the First Lady's phone rang non-stop. Her assistant Angela sifted through the calls, desperate to separate truth from scam. Madam, someone in Ibadan says his daughter matches the age and has a similar birth story. Another call from Benin. Someone says her neighbor's niece was adopted from Lagos and has a mark on her back. Any call from All Love Orphanage? Doris asked. Angela shook her head. Nothing yet. Doris turned to the large map on her wall. A red pin stuck into Lagos marked All Love Orphanage. A line drawn across to Abuja. We're close, she whispered. But why does it feel like we're so far? Meanwhile, in a secret meeting at the Presidential Situation Room, President Emeka Okorowo was not smiling. He had just been briefed by National Security. Your Excellency, we've had over 7,000 calls and submissions in less than 48 hours, the director of DSS said. 90% are hoaxes or people trying to exploit the bounty. The president's jaw tightened. And the remaining 10%? We're still verifying. Some show promise. We're cross-checking ages, locations, orphanage links. But the orphanage records from 22 years ago are badly kept. Some were even destroyed in a fire 10 years ago. The room fell silent. This is a needle in a haystack, another official muttered. Emeka stood. Then burn the haystack if you must. But find that needle. That evening, Doris appeared on national TV for an exclusive emotional interview. The host leaned forward with curiosity. Your Excellency, why now? Doris took a breath, because silence was no longer an option. For years, I convinced myself that what I did was for survival, that I had no choice, but the truth is, I made a terrible mistake. And now I have to find my daughter, if she's still alive, and ask for her forgiveness. The host blinked back tears. You believe she'll forgive you? I don't know, Doris said honestly, but I know she deserves to be found. Even if it's just to say, I'm sorry I left you behind. The camera zoomed in on her trembling lips, and in the back room of a small buka in Mushin, a woman paused her dishwashing to stare at the TV. Shebi, that's the First Lady crying like this? The man beside her scoffed. She dey fine peak and she abandon. Abeg, na stunt. You go see like 100 girls claim am now. But in a corner of the buka, sitting quietly with her plate of leftover jollof, a girl with dust on her feet and pain in her eyes was staring too. Bisola. She didn't understand what the tears on the screen meant. She didn't even know who the First Lady was. But something about the woman's face stirred something deep inside her, like a whisper from a forgotten dream. Back in the villa, President Okoro returned from a press meeting and found Doris alone on the balcony. She was crying again. Another fake lead, she said, her voice brittle. A family in Enugu forged adoption papers. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. You're getting closer. These things take time. No, Emeka. What if she's dead? What if she never even made it to the orphanage? What if someone took her and she's alive? Doris turned to him. How do you know? Because there's still pain in your eyes, he said gently, and pain doesn't live where death has already settled. She's out there, somewhere, Moa. She broke again in his arms. But that night in a dark room 2 blocks away from Agege Market, a woman sat in front of her laptop scrolling through news articles. She zoomed into the photo of the First Lady, then at the girl she had recently kicked out of her home. Bisola. She was adopted from All Love Orphanage. That's what they told me, the woman murmured to herself. And then she whispered one name. Could it be? She clicked her email inbox and began to write anonymously. To Office of the First Lady. Subject, I think I know the girl you're looking for. Madam First Lady, this one looks promising. Doris looked up, eyes heavy from another sleepless night. Angela placed a file on the glass table before her, one among the dozens that had piled up in the last week. She matches the age. The woman who brought her says the girl was left at a church in Agege 22 years ago, raised by nuns. She even has a birthmark on her arm. Doris sat up, her heart skipped. Where is she? In the waiting room. Doris rushed out of her lounge and into the receiving parlor. A young woman stood awkwardly in a flowery dress, holding her bag close. Her eyes darted around the ornate space. Doris smiled and approached her. My dear, what's your name? Rebecca, Ma. May I see your arm? Rebecca slowly unbuttoned her sleeve. There it was, a birthmark, almost in the exact same place. Doris's eyes filled with tears. But then, Angela came rushing back in, whispering in Doris's ear. Her voice dropped like a stone. She confessed. She drew it with ink. It's fake. Doris's entire body sagged. She turned to the girl, betrayal in her chest. Rebecca burst into tears. I'm sorry, Ma. I just wanted the money. I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear I'm hungry. I've been homeless for months. Guards escorted her out. Doris collapsed onto the nearest chair. Another false lead. Another open wound. Over the next 3 days, 12 more girls came forward. All lies. Some had been coached. Some were orphans, yes, but the timelines didn't match. The adoption centers had no records. The stories fell apart under light questioning. Doris stopped eating. She barely spoke. The media began to question her intentions. Some journalists whispered that it was all a publicity stunt for public sympathy. Others speculated that she was mentally unstable from stress. At night, President Okoro sat beside her, rubbing her hand as she stared blankly at the ceiling. Maybe this is punishment, she said quietly. Maybe God really shut my womb forever. Don't talk like that, he whispered. I abandoned a baby. I threw her away like garbage. And now the whole world is watching me try to fix what I broke. But I can't even find her. What kind of mother doesn't recognize her own child? You were a child yourself, Doris, and we both made mistakes. But if there's any justice left in the world, we will find her. In a dusty alley in Lagos, Bisola wiped her hands on a rag and stepped away from the back of the buka where she had just helped wash a mountain of plates. The owner, Mama Nine, gave her a bottle of water and waved her off. No food today, she said. Business was slow. Bisola didn't argue. She nodded and walked slowly into the street. Her body was shrinking. Her cheeks were hollow. Her bones stuck out through her dress. But her eyes, they still burned with the will to survive. She had asked around and finally gotten directions to All Love Orphanage. She was planning to go. She just needed strength. That night, she slept in an open shed behind a welding workshop, curled up beside an abandoned mattress. Her dreams were filled with shadows. A woman's voice called out in the dark. Bisola! Bisola! She woke up sweating. The next day, at the presidential villa, Doris received a mysterious email. Subject, I think I know the girl you're looking for. She opened it with shaking hands. There was no sender name, no location, just a brief message. She was adopted from All Love Orphanage by a couple named Aduni and Sunday. They had twins and kicked her out last month. She goes by the name Bisola. Last seen near Agege Market. Attached was a blurry photo of a thin girl in ragged clothes standing outside a kiosk. Doris zoomed in. The image was grainy. But something struck her deep in the chest. The eyes. They reminded her of someone, but she couldn't trust her emotions anymore. She had been wrong too many times. Angela stood beside her, reading over her shoulder. Should we trace the IP address? Already on it, said a voice behind them. It was DSS Director Ibrahim. The email was sent from a public cafe in Machine. We've dispatched officers to speak with the cyber cafe owner and check the CCTV footage. Doris clutched the photo. Something about this girl. There was a pain in her stare that mirrored Doris's own soul. Find her, she said, and check with All Love Orphanage. Yes, Ma, Ibrahim replied. But even as the search teams mobilized, Doris stood before her mirror that night, touching her cheek, trying to see the younger version of herself. If I do find her, will she forgive me? She whispered to her reflection. There was no answer, only silence, and the quiet, ticking sound of time running out. Bisola could barely feel her legs as she dragged herself along the dusty roadside, her thin slippers flapping against her cracked heels. She hadn't eaten since yesterday, a dry biscuit given to her by a meat pie seller who felt sorry for her. But today, her body had reached its limit. Her stomach was a hollow drum. Her head buzzed, but she had only one goal: All Love Orphanage. She didn't know what she expected to find. A bed, a plate of rice, someone who would finally care. She didn't even know if they would recognize her. After all, she was only 2 years old when she was adopted. But it was the only place she had ever been claimed, even if only for a while. She finally saw the gate, faded yellow paint, a cracked wooden sign that read, All Love Orphanage Home, where every child is loved. Bisola stood at the gate for a long time, gathering strength. Her hands trembled as she knocked. Nothing. She knocked again, harder. Finally, the small square window creaked open. A middle-aged matron in a green wrapper peeked out. Her eyes were sharp, tired. Yes? What is it? Please, Ma. I'm looking for help. I used to live here. I was adopted from here when I was 2. I don't have anywhere else to go. The woman looked her over with a judgmental eye. How old are you? 13. Shh, the woman clicked her tongue. We don't take teenagers. Government rules we only accept children under 10. Please, Ma, Bisola begged her. I've been on the street. I haven't eaten. I have nowhere to sleep. The woman narrowed her eyes. You think you're the only one suffering? We're full. No space. Go back to whoever threw you out. I can help sweep, wash clothes. I just want to sleep somewhere safe. The window slammed shut. Bisola stood frozen. Then she knocked again, harder, more desperate. Please, please, Ma, I'll do anything. The woman shouted from inside. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. Bisola collapsed to her knees. Her arms dropped, her face buried into the dusty ground. Her whole body shook as she cried. On the other side of town, the presidential convoy was being prepped. Angela entered the First Lady's quarters with a calm urgency. Ma, we traced the tip from yesterday. The name matches. Bisola. She was adopted from All Love Orphanage. DSS confirmed it. Doris's heart raced. And where is she now? We don't know exactly, but we spoke with a woman who used to live in the same compound as the Adunas. She said the girl was thrown out for allegedly stealing meat. Doris flinched. She's been living on the streets since then, Angela added. In the orphanage? Doris asked quickly. They confirmed that a girl named Bisola was adopted from their facility 13 years ago. The record is barely readable, but the name is there. Age matches. Location matches. Doris stood up. Get the convoy. I want to visit the orphanage today. Back at the orphanage gate, Bisola had slumped to the ground. Her body was weak. Her eyes burned. The sun blazed above, but she felt cold. A group of younger children inside the orphanage peeked through the gate, whispering, She's crying. She's dirty. She said she lived here before. No one helped. No one opened the gate. Bisola finally stood up, leaning on the wall for balance. Her hands were shaking. Her stomach groaned. Then, sirens. A long convoy of black SUVs began approaching from the other end of the road. Children and staff from the orphanage rushed to the gate to look. Ah, it's the First Lady, one of the nannies shouted. Everybody line up! Line up! The compound exploded into organized chaos. Children rushed to wear uniforms. Staff fixed headscarves. Banners were unfolded. But at the gate, one child still sat there. Bisola, too weak to stand, too forgotten to matter. The convoy pulled up. The doors of the lead SUV opened. Doris Okoro stepped out in a white lace gown, surrounded by security and aides. Cameras clicked as she waved. Then she froze. Her eyes landed on the girl at the gate. Alone, dirty, crying. Something in her chest pulled violently. She walked forward and spoke quietly to her guard. "Who is that?" "No idea, Ma. Probably another street child." Doris moved past the cameras, past the cheering staff, and knelt before the girl. "Hello, sweetheart. What's your name?" Bisola looked up slowly. Her lips trembled. "Bisola." Doris blinked. Her breath caught. "Where are your parents?" "I don't have any." "Where do you stay?" "The street. I came here to ask for help, but they said I'm too old." Doris turned sharply toward the matron. "You turned her away?" "She's not eligible, Ma. Over 10. We follow regulation." "I don't care about regulation," Doris said firmly. "This one is coming with me." The matron's mouth dropped open. "But Ma, I said she's coming with me." Bisola stared at her in disbelief. "Would you like to come with me?" Doris asked softly. Bisola nodded, still unsure if this was real. Doris took off her white scarf and wrapped it around the girl's shoulders. "Come, my dear, you're not sleeping on any street again." As the convoy pulled away, the cameras captured a once homeless girl, now sitting beside the First Lady. But what they didn't know, what Doris didn't yet know, was that the girl whose hand she held was her own flesh and blood. Bisola sat silently in the back seat of the First Lady's SUV, her frail body wrapped in Doris's silk scarf. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap. Every bump on the road made her flinch. She kept looking around, unsure if this was a dream. A few hours ago, she was begging to be let into the orphanage. Now she was inside an air-conditioned car with leather seats, riding with the most powerful woman in the country. Doris glanced at her from time to time. Something about the girl tugged at her. Her eyes, her posture, the way her lower lip trembled when she was nervous. Angela leaned in from the front seat and whispered, "She looks so much like you when you were younger." Doris nodded slowly. "I noticed." When they arrived at the presidential villa, security personnel helped Bisola out gently. Her feet shook as she stepped onto the polished marble floor of the First Lady's private quarters. Everything glistened: chandeliers, gold-lined curtains, scented air. Bisola didn't belong here, she knew it. She felt it. She clutched Doris's scarf tighter. A maid came forward with fresh clothes. Another offered food, but Bisola just stood still, staring at the chandelier above her, blinking back tears. Doris knelt beside her. "You're safe here, okay? You don't have to sleep on the streets anymore." Bisola nodded but didn't speak. Doris turned to Angela. "Let her rest. Make sure she eats something. I want to speak with her later." Hours passed. Bisola sat alone in the guest room, wrapped in a blanket, watching the rain patter against the wide glass windows. A tray of untouched food sat beside her. Her eyes stayed fixed on the lightning outside. She didn't feel worthy of the bed she sat on, or the blanket, or the silence. Back on the streets, people like her weren't seen. Here, it felt like too many eyes were watching. In the next room, Doris and President Okoro sat with the DSS director, Ibrahim, reviewing the email tip again. "So she was adopted by the Adonis?" Emeka asked. "Yes, sir," Ibrahim said. "We spoke with the orphanage. The handwritten record confirms that a female child named Bisola was adopted by Mr. and Mrs. Sunday Adoni from All Love Orphanage 13 years ago." Doris held her breath. "No last name?" "No, just Bisola. That's all the record shows." Angela entered with a file. "And sir, we spoke to the nurse who worked at the orphanage back then. She said the baby was dropped in a blanket with no note, just a beaded bracelet that said, 'Hope.'" Doris's breath caught in her chest. "Hope." She whispered the word like it carried a lifetime of secrets. "I named her that in my mind the day I left her." Emeka turned to her slowly. "You named her?" "I mean, in my heart," Doris replied, voice shaking. "I was too afraid to leave a note. But I kept whispering to her, 'You are my hope. You are hope.'" She clutched her chest. What if, Emeka stood in paste, we can't jump to conclusions, but the facts are adding up. Same orphanage, same year, no record of biological parents, and that face. He turned the screen to show a photo taken of Bisola when she arrived. Look at her eyes. Doris nodded slowly. They look like mine when I was younger. Later that evening, Doris entered Bisola's room with a warm smile. The girl sat up quickly, nervously adjusting the blanket. You don't have to be scared, Doris said gently, sitting beside her. You can talk to me. Bisola swallowed. Thank you for helping me. Do you remember your life for the Adonis? No, I was just told they adopted me from the orphanage. Do you know the name of your biological parents? Bisola shook her head. Doris hesitated, then reached for the girl's arm. May I? Bisola extended it slowly. Doris rolled up her sleeve. There it was, a strange, oddly shaped birthmark just above the elbow. Doris's heart dropped. She slowly rolled up her own sleeve. Emeka had always teased her about the mark shaped like a comma on her arm. It was the same exact birthmark. Same shape. Same location. Bisola stared at it. You have the same thing? She asked, confused. Doris blinked rapidly to keep tears from falling. Yes, I always thought it was rare. Bisola stared, something stirring deep inside her. What was your name before they named you Bisola? Doris asked. I don't know. The orphanage just called me that. I don't remember anything else. Do you remember anything about being left at the orphanage? I sometimes dream about a woman crying, Bisola whispered. She says she's sorry, but I never see her face. Doris couldn't speak. Her throat tightened. That night, Doris paced in her room. She's the one, she told Emeka. I feel it. I know, he said softly, but we need proof. Doris nodded. Tomorrow morning, Emeka continued, we do a day test. Down the hall, Bisola lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. She reached for her arm, touched the birthmark, and for some reason her heart felt like it was about to explode. She didn't know why, but something was coming, something that would change everything. The presidential clinic was silent. A gentle hum from the air conditioner filled the room where Bisola sat, legs dangling off the examination table. She watched the nurse swab her inner cheek and place the sample into a sterile container. Everything felt surreal. She had no idea what was going on. All she knew was that something had shifted the moment the First Lady saw her. Now everyone was treating her like glass, delicate, untouchable, sacred. Across the glass window, Doris Okoro stood with her hands pressed together tightly, watching the nurse take the second DNA sample. Hers. She had barely slept. Her mind played over every possibility. What if she was wrong again? What if this hope would shatter too? Still, something in her heart kept whispering, this is her. This is my daughter. 2 hours later, Bisola sat alone in a private guest lounge with a cup of hot chocolate in her hands. She sipped slowly, the warm liquid calming her jittery nerves. She looked around at the paintings, the gold curtain tassels, the polished floor. She still didn't understand why they brought her here. Why the First Lady was so gentle, so interested, so emotional. She hadn't asked questions. She was too afraid this might all disappear. Meanwhile, in the First Family's private study, President Emeka Okoro held the sealed envelope in his hand. Doris stood beside him, barely breathing. Angela and DSS Director Ibrahim looked on in silence. He slowly opened the envelope, pulled out the single page and read it, then looked up. His eyes met his wife's. His lips trembled. Then he whispered, it's her. 99.9% match. She's your daughter, Doris. A sound escaped Doris's chest, a mixture of weeping and laughter. Her legs gave way and she collapsed into the couch, clutching her chest, weeping uncontrollably. I knew it, she cried. I knew it was her. I saw it in her eyes. Angela wiped her own tears quietly in the corner. President Okoro bent down, placing the result sheet on the table. And she came back to us. Doris stood up, legs shaking. I want to see her. Wait, Emeka said, gently stopping her. She doesn't know yet. She needs to hear it carefully. Lovingly. No cameras. No protocol. Doris nodded. Angela whispered, should I prepare her? No, Doris said, holding her chest. This This is between a mother and her daughter. When Doris entered the guest room, Bisola quickly stood. Ma, sit, Doris said softly, taking her hands and sitting beside her. Bisola's eyes searched her face. She looked nervous, scared. I want to tell you something, Doris said, trying to steady her voice. Something very important. Bisola nodded slowly. Years ago, I had a baby girl. Bisola's brows furrowed. I was 17. I was scared. I had no money. The father of the baby had left to hustle in Lagos. I was alone. So, I did something I've regretted every day of my life. Bisola listened, frozen. I wrapped the baby in a shawl. I whispered the word hope over her again and again. Then I left her, at the gates of All Love Orphanage, believing someone would take care of her. Bisola's hand began to shake. Hope? Doris nodded, tears in her eyes. The orphanage named her Bisola. Bisola gasped softly. That's me. Yes, Doris whispered. You, my dear, are hope. You are my daughter. Bisola stared at her, eyes wide, breath stuck in her throat. I didn't know until recently. I had been searching. I've been crying for years, asking God to forgive me. Then I saw you at that gate, and something in me knew. Silence. Tears gathered in Bisola's eyes, but her lips didn't move. I know this is sudden. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I love you. From the moment I laid you down that day to this moment, I have never stopped loving you. Bisola burst into tears. She leaned forward and collapsed into Doris's arms, sobbing. For the first time in her life, someone was holding her, not out of pity, not out of duty, but out of love. Real motherly love. Doris rocked her like a baby, her tears soaking the girl's dusty hair. My baby, she whispered. My little girl. I thought nobody wanted me, Bisola cried. I thought I was a mistake. No, Doris said, cupping her face. You were never a mistake. You were a miracle, and I'm sorry I couldn't see that sooner. That night, the presidential villa glowed with light, but there were no press conferences, no media alerts, no grand speeches, just a quiet, intimate dinner. Doris sat beside her daughter, spoon-feeding her bits of soft rice and chicken. Angela watched from the corner, weeping softly. President Okoro raised a toast with sparkling apple juice. To family, to restoration, and to hope, our living miracle. Bisola looked around, overwhelmed. She wasn't dreaming. This was real. She was no longer the girl eating from dustbins or begging at bus parks. She was home. 1 month later, in a nationally televised ceremony at the presidential villa, the First Lady introduced a new initiative, the Hope Foundation for Street Children. Beside her stood a 13-year-old girl in a sky blue dress, smiling shyly at the cameras. This, Doris said proudly, holding her daughter's hand, is the reason I started this foundation. My daughter Bisola is living proof that no child is too lost to be found. The crowd erupted in applause. From the streets of Lagos to the arms of a mother who once let her go, Bisola had returned, not just as a girl, not just as a daughter, but as a symbol of healing, of mercy, of love, that never truly lets go. The story teaches that no one is too lost to be found, and true healing begins when we confront our past. Love, forgiveness, and compassion can restore what was broken, turning pain into purpose and rejection into a powerful reunion. We hope you enjoyed this story. If it touched your heart, please share your thoughts and what you learned in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. And guess what? Another powerful and inspiring story is coming in just a few days. So don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you'll be the first to watch when it drops. If you found this story meaningful, please like, share, and spread the message. Thank you for watching, and God bless you.